All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're here for another Aquarist chat with one of our amazing aquarists. I'm Jose. I've been on the Facebook Lives on and off for a while. And joining me today is Fernando, who is one of our associate curators and part of our husbandry team. So how are you doing today, Fernando?
I'm doing great. Thanks. Good to see you, Jose.
Good to see you as well. Glad to see that our animals have a very talented team working to keep them safe and healthy.
Thank you.
So thanks for joining us. Thanks for talking to us about a really unique part of our collection, I think.
Yeah, happy to be here to do this. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I just wanted to start, if I could, just to honor the memory of three folks that contributed a lot to science and to the aquarium world. First is Dr. Jack Randall, an ichthyologist who described more than 800 species of coral reef fishes. His books are in our library and probably the library of every public aquarium in the world. And then I wanted to acknowledge Cindy Clopaldo, who was a collections manager at Scripps' vertebrate collection. And she specialized in deep sea fishes and helped the aquarium a lot. And lastly, I wanted to honor the memory of Bob Fenner, who was a local resident, a member of the Birch Aquarium at Scripps, who was an author, wrote many articles on responsible aquarium keeping, gave presentations all around the world, avid scuba diver and photographer. And he was just a great friend to everyone he met. So three great people that contributed a lot to my understanding of this field.
And I think it's really important to acknowledge how big a part the community plays into something like development of our understanding. And because it really does take an entire community to keep a place like the Birch Aquarium at Scripps running.
Yeah, for sure. We get so much help from scientists. We understand more about our animals that we keep, and hopefully we can keep these animals alive, and maybe science can learn from their life in captivity.
Absolutely. So today we're going to be focusing on one of the kind of cornerstone species that we have at the aquarium, right?
Exactly, yeah. This fish is one of my favorites. It's a really cool fish. It's the Scythe Butterflyfish. And just a little bit of background. So butterfly fishes belong to this family called Chaetodontidae. And basically that translates from the Greek into bristle-tooth, referring to their dentition. What these fish have in common is that they're pretty compressed fish, pretty flat fish. They kind of have this square, rectangular body. Most of them come from coral reefs. They're pretty, really colorful. They also have these prominent dorsal spines that help them for protection. And another thing in common is this pointy snout, this tiny mouth, some longer than others. And then many have this band or bar over the eye, which helps disguise the eye. And some even have false eye spots on the posterior end of their body that helps deceive predators. So the fish that we're talking about today falls in this family, the Scythe Butterflyfish, and it was originally named Chaetodon, the genus name, falcifer. And falcifer is Latin for scythe bearing, and the scythe being that tool that we used to cut wheat with. So that black marking that you see, that upside down V, is shaped very much like a scythe. And that's where the fish got its name from, its common name from, or its species name from.
Both, actually, yeah, right?
Right.
Yeah, so butterfly fish are like really distinctive too, just in general. And I think, yeah, like you look at this animal right away and you can tell broadly that it is part of that butterfly fish family. And then specifically, it's got that very distinctive shape that you mentioned. So that helps ID a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. It's an easy fish to spot out.
Mm-hmm. And that coloration also helps a little bit. It's some of them are mostly white, but there are also a lot that are this big bright yellow as well, which I think has helped us historically at the Birch Aquarium at Scripps. Yeah,
this fish is really special to Scripps and to the Birch Aquarium because we discovered it. Scripps scientists discovered it, and then we were the first aquarium to display it, as far as we know. So it became an emblematic fish for the aquarium. And here's some of the memorabilia that we've collected. Some of us have collected over the years. So it's really important and really a thing of pride for us.
Yeah. I was definitely wearing my my own Scythe Butterflyfish shirt yesterday from way back when I started volunteering at the aquarium some number of years ago. And I don't look my age. And so it had the Scythe Butterflyfish over here where we have our current logo today. But it's very near and dear to my heart for, I'm sure, the exact same reasons that it's dear to your heart, Fern.
Yeah, and it's still part of the aquarium.
Absolutely.
Our business cards. It's the photo of that fish is on our business cards.
Mm-hmm.
So still with us.
Yeah, just in slightly different places than it was before.
Right. So yeah.
So we're going to move to a map. So we can kind of see at the very top, there's the Sonora Desert. There's the tip of San Diego. But what are we looking at here, Fern?
So this map shows the range, or some of the range, where this butterfly fish is found, and basically Southern California all the way down to Peru, off the coast of Peru. As we get into the story a little bit later, there may be 2 species of Scythe butterflyfish, but basically this is the range from Southern California to Peru, and they're more commonly found in the down south in deeper water.
Okay.
So this is the general area we're talking about.
Yeah, kind of a broad range there. And I think that additional piece of these animals are generally found in slightly deeper, slightly colder water is an additional point too that really helps our understanding of what we're looking at here.
Right.
Yeah. So we're going to turn the clock way back to the 1950s to start off with, right?
That's right. So on the left is Dr. Carl Hubbs, the first ichthyologist at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. And he led this expedition with 16 scientists to Guadalupe Island in Mexico. And it's about a third of the way down the Baja Peninsula, about 280 miles off the coast. And basically they were going to record the species of fishes that live around that island. It's pretty isolated. So among the 13 scientists were 6 divers that used aqualung. The acronym, or the term scuba, was not around at that time. It was the aqualung. And the gentleman,
baffling considering how much we use scuba today.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. These guys were like the pioneers of scuba diving. So the gentleman second from the right is Andreas Ricknitzer. He was a student of Dr. Hubbs, and he was also one of the pioneer divers in the United States. He and another diver, Connie Limbaugh, bought one of the first aqualungs from a store in Los Angeles. So these 6 men were the divers on that team. And the way the paper is written, it describes Andy going down at about 20 feet off the side of the island, chasing this one fish that he wasn't able to find. The water got cloudy, and he decided to just get out of that cloudy water and dive a little bit deeper. And as he went down the side of this island, he finally reached the bottom, the sandy bottom, and then he spotted this brightly colored fish, which turns out to be the Scythe butterflyfish. He's able to spear it. And remember, at that time, they were collecting and trying to identify species that lived there. So he brought up that fish, and it was the first one discovered, as far as we know, and the first time it was ever described by both Dr. Hubbs and Andy Ricknitzer. And so this was November 16th, 1954.
So as far as we know, nobody at that time had ever seen this fish before.
Yeah, I didn't find any information. As far as I know, this was the first time.
Cool.
And yeah, and in the next slide, we'll look at
hopping ahead 4 years into the future.
Right. 4 years ahead, they describe this fish in this research paper. And this paper is like over 40 pages long, and it's so detailed. And just looking at every aspect of the anatomy of this fish, the morphology, the scales, the number of spines, all this work to distinguish this from other butterfly fishes and why it is still in the family of butterfly fishes. So a lot of work goes into this, and you can tell by the date, 4 years later, it took a while for them to do the proper kind of work to describe this fish fully. And then you see the photo on the right. That is the photo of the fish they collected. And on the bottom is an x-ray of that same fish. So
a lot of attention to detail in there, and trying to show off all angles, even from the inside.
Yeah, and then you think about, I mentioned Dr. Jack Randall's name at the beginning, who described more than 800 species of coral reef fishes. So you can imagine the amount of work that he did, and Carl Hubbs as well.
Yeah, because this is 40 pages for one species of fish, and Dr. Randall and Dr. Hubbs were both very, very prolific ichthyologists, especially in the pioneering stages of the field, right?
Exactly. So yeah.
Looking a lot at specific spines, specific teeth,
yes,
all the things that make all these fish unique and well suited to how they live and where they live.
Definitely, yeah, for sure. So we jump ahead to 1966, Cabo San Lucas. There's pictured Dr. Rosenblatt, who was the successor to Dr. Hubbs. He was a ichthyologist at Scripps. He takes a dive in Cousteau's diving saucer, and it's a two-man sub, and they go down to, I believe, to a depth of 500 feet. And on his return, Dr. Rosenblatt mentions that he sees an abundance of Scythe butterfly fishes between 200 and 400 feet deep, which is pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. And that's all that's said. That's all that I could find. But pretty cool that this fish has been seen again by a scientist that was described, a scientist who described the fish from Scripps in the first place. So it's pretty cool that he sees this fish. And then we jump ahead another year. Mm-hmm. So in about 1967, Dave Powell, who was the curator of SeaWorld San Diego at the time, runs a collecting trip in Baja, California. And he takes with him this gentleman, Bob Koala, who was a diver collector for Scripps Institution of Oceanography and the Scripps Aquarium. And they happen to go to Baja, the tip of Baja, and they make a dive, I guess in that same area where Rosenblatt had been. So I imagine there was some communication about this.
Yeah. So they're kind of targeting the same depths too. Rosenblatt dove to 200, 300 feet. Bob Koala, it looks like took a little shallower, 180 feet, but that's pretty down there.
Yeah, for those days, especially, yeah. He goes down to about 180 feet. He catches a Scythe butterfly fish, and he inserts a hypodermic needle into the fish to release gas that's in the swim bladder of the fish. And this swim bladder helps keep fish buoyant, neutrally buoyant, wherever they are, whatever depth. But as you bring this fish to the surface, that swim bladder can expand with the decreasing pressure. So in order to relieve that, you insert a hypodermic needle, and the bubbles from that swim bladder start coming out, and the organs are left intact and healthy. So he successfully brings that fish to the surface. And on the right is a photo of the first color photo that was taken of this fish in 1967. And that was taken by Dave Powell, and it's in one of Jerry Allen's books. So that was pretty cool. This fish was preserved. It didn't live that long. It ended up being preserved for scientific purposes. But really cool that a year later that was discovered. So yeah, then we jump ahead to 1970, and then the same gentleman, Bob Koala, with his coworker, Ron McConaughey, who was a marine technician at Scripps, diver and boatsman, they go off to God's Rock, which is a reef just located in our backyard.
So we're a lot closer to the Birch Aquarium now. We've been really kind of meandering around Baja, and then now we're right in Birch Aquarium's backyard. Exactly. We're a little shallower, but it's 68 feet, so you still need it's not entirely a shallow drop. Yeah.
So they're diving, collecting animals for researchers, and Ron McConaughey spots a Scythe butterflyfish, and he's trying to communicate with Bob Koala, who's trying to collect a sea anemone close by. And whatever he does to get his attention, it doesn't work. Finally, Ron writes the genus name of this fish in the sand, Catodon. He writes it in the sand, and then he pulls Bob over and points to what he just wrote in the sand. Bob doesn't get it. He goes back to work. Finally, Ron grabs Bob Koala, brings him back, and points out the butterfly fish. So now they're trying to collect it. So it's in this reef where there's a tunnel. So this fish goes in one hole and comes out the other side. So the way Ron described it to me was that they were like playing tennis, and this fish was like the ball. Every time he'd come out one hole and they try to catch him, he'd come out. So they were on either end of this tunnel, and finally Bob catches it. And he communicates to Bob somehow, to Ron, to go up to the boat, and that he has a hypodermic needle. Again, even at 68-foot depth, there's, this fish would have a lot of problems coming up. So Ron goes up to the boat, grabs a hypodermic needle off the tool chest in the boat, comes back down. Bob inserts it, and these guys are biologists, so they know where the swim bladder is located, and they insert it between the scales so it doesn't harm the fish. We want these fish to come up alive and be healthy, and they do. They're successful at bringing this fish up, and this was the first one recorded along the coastline of California. And I'm sticking in my story. I'm sticking to the fishes and events that were related to Scripps and the aquarium. Others have seen this fish elsewhere, but I'm kind of sticking to the ones that are, related to our history.
Yeah, closer to what we've done, and we've been able to contribute to what we know about this fish. Exactly. And we were talking a lot about like the level of attention to detail that scientists get to in ichthyology. And if you're looking, audience, if you're looking at this data sheet too, you can see there are very, very specific latitude and longitude coordinates. There's the sea temperature, the depth. There is every detail we need, so that hopefully if we need to go out and find another Scythe butterfly fish at some point after 1970, we'll be able to know, okay, this is where we've seen one, and we know apocryphally we've seen them at 200 feet depth over in Cabo. So that helps us if we ever need to find another one. And we have a picture of that very same specimen that you were just discussing over here, right?
Yeah, so on the right is the paper submitted that Bob Koala and Ron McConaughey wrote up about that fish they collected in La Jolla. And if you look at kind of the center of the body of that fish, you see a little black spot just behind the pectoral fin. That's where they inserted the hypodermic needle. And that left a little scar on this fish. But that is the fish that they collected. And one thing I want to mention is, if you can see it on the collection form, the date of collection was November 16th, 1970. The first one ever collected by Andy Recknitzer was November 16th, 1954. So 16 years exactly to the date that this fish was collected, after the very first one. So that's pretty cool.
Almost seems like fate.
Yeah. Pretty neat.
Yeah. And then here's another view of that 1970 specimen, the one collected by Bob Koala and Ron McConaughey.
This is a CT scan of that same specimen. And again, it's this detail work that scientists do to know that the work they're doing is right, or the best to the, of their ability. So it's just part of that, which I think is really beautiful, and it's really cool.
Yep.
And so with the collection of that fish, the aquarium got a lot of publicity. There are even a few more articles that I didn't include, but here on the left are Bob Koala and Ron McConaughey looking at the fish they'd collected. And then on the right, another article with the former director of the aquarium, Don Wilkie, with Bob Koala observing the same fish. And this fish lived until 1971. But I think at that time, the aquarists were learning a lot about the care of this fish. No one had ever kept one alive. So I think that was pretty cool that they were able to observe it and learn from this experience. And the fact that they were able to bring it from depth successfully was another cool thing. So, yeah.
And it added this really unique, really local piece to the collection as well, especially at that time.
Yeah, got a lot of publicity. And I don't know for sure, but I would imagine maybe before this or sometime during this time that this fish became the emblem of the aquarium.
That would make sense.
It really helped boost our notoriety.
So, and then this is what we would be looking at way back 50 years ago, right?
Yeah, so this is what the old T. Wayland Vaughn Aquarium looked like Commonly, it was commonly called the Scripps Aquarium, but it would be one of these exhibits that first butterfly fish was displayed in, and visitors would come through by donation to come into this little aquarium and see this really cool fish. And on the right is a photo I took, I think when I was a volunteer or just early on in my career, of one of the fishes that was collected, after 1970. And it was probably by the curator at the time, Bob Snodgrass, and the head aquarist, Mark Ferguson, who made those collections in those days so that we consistently displayed a Scythe butterfly fish. And I don't know the origin of this fish, but I'm pretty sure it was in Mexican waters.
That makes sense based on the rest of the stories that you've told. And the Scripps Aquarium physically is still around, right?
Yeah, it is. In 1992, it became the Birch Aquarium at Scripps. So we're still connected with Scripps Institution of Oceanography and UCSD. Right. But yeah, we're a bigger building now.
Yeah, we're up the hill from our prior site.
Exactly.
Is what I meant.
Right.
Yeah. All right. And then going back to our points earlier about how scientists really try to be thorough and really try to double check their work. Over in 1905, there were some more developments, right?
Yeah. So 1995, this ichthyologist, Leblanc, who's not related to Scripps, describes a new species of Scythe butterflyfish from the Galapagos Islands. And so he describes this fish as Prognathodes carlhubsi. So the genus name, Prognathodes, it basically translates into first mouth. And it may refer to the long snout that the butterflyfish has. And he changes it from Catodon to Prognathodes. And then he honors Dr. Carl Hubbs of Scripps by giving it that species name, species name. So that's pretty cool. And then in addition to that, the other thing is that he changes the name of the northern butterfly fish, ours, the Catodon falciparum, to Prognathodes falciparum. So now, apparently there are two species of Scythe butterfly fish, and my understanding is that there's still debate over this, whether there are really one or two species, and that genetic work would have to be done to know for sure. But anyway, so as it stands now, there are two species. One is the falciparum, and one is carlhubsi. So even though that second one was not discovered by anyone at Scripps or had Scripps involvement, it definitely has a Scripps name, Dr. Carl Hubbs' name in it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, looking to the history of that specific, I guess, species, to the history of that species, even if it is a second separate species, to give that name, and really trying to be thorough about, okay, now we have this extra tool in the toolbox, and for 25 years, it's kind of been in flux because we want to definitely make sure we get it right about what we're understanding about these fish.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's part of science, is always getting closer to the truth, and finding the facts. And that's the cool thing about science.
Yeah. We're open to changing what we know based on getting more information, like doing molecular analysis, hopefully down the line on these animals.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. Yeah.
All right.
So
and then here's a nice comparison.
Yeah. So on the left is the Scythe butterfly from the north, the original one that was discovered. On the right is the one from the Galapagos. And you can see some differences, or one difference right off the bat. There's more yellow in the body of the southern one versus the northern. The other thing that they say is distinguishing factor is that scythe mark. In the southern one, the very tip, the top point of that scythe mark reaches the base of the dorsal spines, whereas in the northern, it doesn't. It's just shy of the dorsal spine. Also, that black band that comes over the eye in the southern one is more gray in the northern. Now, all these things are, I don't know more than that. Maybe there's more in the paper, but I haven't read that paper. But these are just some basic characteristics that one can determine one from the other. And again, hopefully in the future, it'll be determined whether there are one or two species. Yeah,
because you can see a lot of differences, but it could be a color morph, but it could also be something deeper within the animals as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Very distinctive though.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then let's go back home into where we are here in the year 2020.
Right. So we're currently displaying this fish. The pair in our tank number 16 were collected by our associate curator, Leslie Matsushige. And then
and she is watching, so hi, Leslie.
Oh, cool. Hi, Les. And Bob Burhans, who was our former curator at the time. They collected this pair in 1999. So we've had this pair for 21 years now. And these were collected in Baja off of San Benito Island, and at a depth of between 40 and 60 feet. And so I just wanted to share a little bit about how we care for them and what their husbandry is like. They're really, honestly, they're very hardy fish, especially if you bring them up safely. They come up safely. They do really well. They're a temperate water fish. They like cool water. So we maintain ours between 58 and 64 degrees year round. They eat just about anything that fits in their mouth. They're not picky at all, which is great. And for such a striking and beautiful fish, it's really pleasant to know that they're not that picky, because some butterfly fishes, especially tropical ones, can be really picky and should not be kept in aquariums. Some are strictly coral polyp eaters, and those are of course, very hard to keep alive. So this pair, again, have been with us for 21 years, and they're doing beautifully. And I just wanted to say, encourage, as we open on July 4th, to encourage people to check them out and take their own photos and video, because you're really not going to see this fish anywhere else. And we're not going to be scuba diving down to 200 feet tomorrow to check them out. So here they are in your own backyard. Come and check them out.
Yeah. And I do want to say that these animals have been with us for almost 21 years, and who knows how long they live beyond that. But the fact that we've been able to keep to maintain this pair for over 20 years is, I think, a testament to the level of detail and the level of care that our animal care team puts in not just the care of our Scythe butterflyfish, but like our entire animal collection at the Birch Aquarium.
Yeah, the staff here is really dedicated to the care of the animals, and we go all out. We do whatever we can to make sure that they're healthy. And for all the fish, it doesn't matter how rare they are or how common they are. Yeah. They're treated the same.
But it looks like we do have a quick question before we move on to the next slide.
Sure.
And Laura wants to know, have the pair of Scythe butterflyfish laid any eggs?
Yes. This pair, we believe they're a male and female pair. They've spawned. Our staff have collected eggs. We've worked with Hub SeaWorld Research, their aquaculture facility, but the eggs were not fertile. So we've tried this in the past few years, and it may be that, I think we have a male and female, but the eggs were just not fertile. So we're not sure what's going on, but who knows? Maybe one day we'll try again.
But I think the fact that they were spawning at all is another testament to the level of care you guys have been able to provide them through the decades.
Yeah, and they've really thrived in this current exhibit. They used to be in a 500-gallon exhibit. This one is about 1,400 gallons. It's about 6-7 foot deep, and it's like this canyon wall, and it has crevices and caves in it. And I think that's pretty much where they come from, and so they've adapted really well and feel really at home here.
It's good, making sure that we're having our animals in a place that kind of looks like home. So one of our divers sent us a few videos, right? Yeah. So a couple of short clips. This came from our volunteer diver, Scott Mao. He dove in San Pedro Harbor to about almost 200 feet deep. And this is on the UB-88, an old sunken German submarine. And so he shared these videos with us. This is from like maybe a year or less than a year ago. It's about 51 degrees down here, and again, about 200 feet deep. So, right.
Yeah.
let's take a quick look.
So you'll see a lot of rosy rockfish and those strawberry anemones on some of the sub, but there down in the wreckage, you'll see the scythe butterfly come out. And they do live near the reef. They're small fish, and they hang out near these little crevices and caves so they can escape predators. So they're very safe there. So that's pretty typical.
And you're right. The exhibit number 16 back at the aquarium looks a lot like this habitat they would be found in out in San Pedro.
And here's a better view.
Yeah. Let's get to load up. There we go. Nice. And this one has a little bit of sound.
And there he is. So it's pretty neat. You're not going to see this fish every day diving. And you don't expect, we were talking about the range and how it occurs in deeper water as you go further south where the water gets warmer. And so it's believed that as you come up north, especially in its most northern range, which is Southern California, that you could see it in shallower water. And you do. Divers have seen it off of Catalina Island near Los Angeles. But it's kind of interesting to be diving at 200 feet deep in Southern California and finding it this deep. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. But pretty cool that they're out here.
Nice. Yeah. And really, we've been talking a lot about how much the community comes together to be able to do good science, especially on a fish as charismatic as this one. So I know you had a few in memoriams at the beginning, but I know you also have a lot more thanks over here towards the end of our broadcast tonight.
Yeah,
morning.
Definitely. I want to thank Ben Frabel, who's the collections manager at the vertebrates collection down at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. Ron McConaughey, who was the former marine technician at Scripps. Scott Mao, our volunteer diver, who provided those cool videos. And then my coworker, Leslie Matsushige, Associate Curator at the aquarium. They all provided information and just different things that help make the story a little more complete. So I appreciate all of their help.
And I also want to say before we end the broadcast how much I have appreciated the help of the Aquarist team throughout my entire career at the Birch Aquarium. I think that team has a lot of knowledge behind it, and I think that you guys are all friendly and always ready to help any staff member at the aquarium with any question they might have about any of the animals we have around. And if you guys don't know, you're happy to admit, hey, we're not experts in this, but the other aquarists are, so we can talk to them and have a real conversation. We can all walk away a little more in the know. So thanks so much for being able to do that as a resource, not only to our staff members, but I know when we are open to the public. And we, ladies and gentlemen, if you're feeling like you want to go back to the Birch Aquarium already, we will be open in like a week and a half. So thankfully you won't have to wait too much longer, but thanks so much for also being open to our audience and open to our guests. Because I know as much as I want to know more, I know that our guests also want to know a lot more than I do. So thanks so much for everything that the husbandry team has done, Fernando.
Well, thanks very much, Jose. And I know it's your last day with us at the aquarium. You're off.
I was hoping not to say that on the air.
Yeah, and I'm really happy that at least today we got to work together. I enjoyed it, and I wish you all the best. Thanks
so much. And I know that I'm going to try to make my way back to the aquarium once I am able to. So cool. I'm not going to be gone too long. Cool. Yeah. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Have a lovely afternoon, and we will see you all at the Birch Aquarium in a week and a half. Bye-bye.